Okay, so Luke, today I wanted to talk to you about something that gave me the ick earlier this week. I came across this tool and I was excited about it. And then I navigate over to the pricing page and it says on all of the tiers, start for free. And on enterprise, it just says talk to sales. And I got the immediate ick. I was like, why are they not being transparent around their pricing? And I got even more annoyed because it doesn't even say, like, okay, it says start free trial and then start for free. But it doesn't even say how long the trial is, so I don't even know how much time I have easily. So I was curious to get some of your pricing page icks. And if you don't know what an ick is, it's basically a visceral reaction that you have, like, ugh. So
Yeah.
that is a pricing page ick for me, for sure.
So there's two sides to this coin when it comes to pricing pages, right? There is a psychology of pricing best practice, and then there is a
Mhm.
user-based best practice, right? And depending on the stage or the status of the company, you can afford to err on either side of that coin, right? And I would suggest, without knowing AirOps and without knowing their background, their current growth, etc., I think on their homepage they mentioned quite a few big brands, so they might well be,
Mhm.
in the space. They've got Carter, Ramp, Airwallex, Apollo, HubSpot, Notion, Klaviyo, Upwork. Like they seem to be doing quite well. Um,
Mhm.
Having veiled pricing on your pricing page is actually a friction point to decrease what we call tire kickers, right? People that just want
Mhm.
to click around, have a look, and aren't really at the pointy end of that buying cycle. So if you are in that space where you can afford to do that, absolutely veil the pricing, make them go through some hoops because your funnel is such that you only want high quality leads getting in, right? Um,
Mhm.
that's one way to do it. This is also probably more true when it's a sales led motion because you're going to want them to book a demo. I think on their homepage and even on your pricing page you shared, the book a demo is the primary CTA. I know Start Free Trial was there, but I think Start Book a Demo is definitely highlighted the most on the homepage. So that
Mhm.
that to me indicates a sales led motion. You want them to talk to someone so they can unpack the entirety of the platform. So again, I think that's another way to do it. Yes, when you are looking to evaluate multiple tools or you want to compare the benefits of certain tools in the same category, veiled pricing is an ick because you might like the look of the value proposition, you might look at the features, but is that look enough to get you to commit to a free trial in order to maybe see what the pricing's at? I always like a starts from price point because it gives you an idea of, okay, the bare minimum I'm looking to pay will be this, right? And again, for a startup, particular startup that is completely self-serve, that starting from price point is probably ideal because it will incentivize the people just to go, okay, I know I'm going to pay. If worst comes to worst, I'll pay this minimum price. Yes, I'll click through. So it's still enough friction to say, here's the minimum price point. Did you want to bring that page back up? And I'll just pick apart a few other things on there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because
Okay.
all in all, aside from the price point piece, we can talk about pricing pages in general. This is a pretty standard SaaS price page, right? When we look at
Mhm.
this, there's a couple of things that they do really well. There's a couple of things that they don't. And again, I'm not going to rip apart AirOps if they're a $100 million company with all these enterprise clients and they're doing well, right? Obviously, what they're doing is working if that's the case. Where I'm coming at it from is what you would see from a best practice piece where a startup says to me, how should I structure my pricing page and what element should I have on there? So firstly, simple tiers. They've done that. Solo, pro, enterprise, gold, silver, bronze, startup, growth, scale, whatever it might be, some semblance of increasing features and benefits for larger companies as they grow. We then go down into the individual components of the plans and we see things like tracked prompts, which engines they support, which is obviously important for people that are surveying an AI content strategy engine. One thing that has become prevalent with AI tooling that can become very ambiguous and gray depending on your knowledge of the platform. So we see here halfway down, it says 20,000 tasks for content production. Right? What is a task? Is that a generated blog post? Is that a prompt? Is that a token? Or like we now have this token consumption economy in the AI engines where it can be very confusing as to what these huge numbers actually mean, right? Even if you jump onto like a Claude or a Cursor or whatever, and you have X amount of tokens with your pro plan or your max plan, for the general punter, you don't know what a token represents in regards to a consumption model. So having 20,000 tasks, it would be good to understand what a task actually is. And I'm sure there might be some additional information as we go. The rest of it makes pretty well sense, right? Basic CMS integrations, community and live chat support, so supports their brand kit, knowledge bases, and single user access. So that's great. Yeah, this is where, again, if we're looking at just this part of the pricing page, I would expect to see a most popular, right? Or a highlighted sort of call to action to say, this is the best plan. I would also love to see an annual versus monthly. Now, noting they don't have price, this isn't for them, but for any other advice I would give to any other pricing page, you should default to the annual pricing and show that that's a discount to the monthly, right? We're trying to incentivize annual contracts over monthly. So having a preferred plan and having that annual to monthly breakdown would be ideal here. And then, the CTA, whether that's start for free or book a demo or talk to sales, that's up to the individual and the status. Now, I noticed there is an extra element now on this pricing page that some companies go into. If you start to scroll down, you see the detailed breakdown of the feature set once we get down past the customers. So comparing the plans here under these prompts track. Now, this is good. I do like this, particularly for more complex products where the delineation between the tiers might not be clear from the first one. Like we mentioned about having so many tasks, etc. We talk about insights, and this is where, say, Baremetrics, for example, if we were to say metrics is included, right, in our AI accelerator plan, we might only have your core SaaS metrics there, right? Your MRR, churn, contraction, expansion. Therefore, we need to define that in the accelerator plan. Here's the type of metrics you get, but in the scale and the growth plan, here's the additional metrics you get. So that's a good way to do it, where you have the same, where you have sort of plan gated feature sets that require upgrades as they go through. This is where you can do that breakdown, and it becomes very apparent and easy to compare across the board here. So I don't mind a detailed breakdown. What I would maybe suggest to anyone else considering this as well is having this as like a concertina, because you can get lost if you start to scroll down. I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked too far down this page, but if you start to scroll, you sort of start to get a little bit lost, right? It's like, what am I looking at? So if each of those core points was actually a drop down, you'd be able to like do a bit more of an easier comparison here. But I do like, look, and there's the FAQs. We've been talking a lot about FAQs lately. There we go. What are tasks? This is great. They're actually defining it now. Tasks are the currency used to complete certain actions, like generating content or extracting data. So, okay, great. So if they're willing to go to the point of putting an FAQ in to define what are tasks, like we already mentioned, I'd actually have that as a tooltip. If there's any ambiguity around what a part of the product is, then let the user know from the start. So go right back up the top to the tiers. I would just have a little embedded tooltip next to tasks, because I know people are going to ask that. It says a task is like, and just have that FAQ there as a tooltip, right? I think that's easy to do, so you don't have to make people to scroll. Because we know, looking at even on pricing pages, you look at something like a Hotjar, a VWO, anything that shows you user experience on a web page, people rarely scroll to the bottom. So if you're putting valuable information, and particularly information that's going to force a decision, right at the bottom, past like the second fold, you're hiding that information, and people aren't going to get to it. So I'd love to see a tooltip that's easy to consume at the top there. Yeah. So that's about it, really. My opinion on this. Like I said, it's not too bad. Simple, to the point. Doesn't clutter the main piece. I agree with your ick, as it were, of not having pricing. But I think that speaks more towards your status as a buyer than the product itself, right? So you have had the ick because you are in your comparison phase. You are looking to compare platforms and the value to you, and you've come across one that doesn't have pricing, when all you're after at the moment is a fair value assessment. So, as opposed to if you were going to this AirOps as a first starting point and you didn't really have an intent, you were further down that funnel of a thing. You were like, let's start for free and see where we go. That's what I think about that.
Yeah. I'm still gonna try it out because I'm curious. I want to see what the hype is about, essentially. But any other things around pricing pages?
Always test variations. Always test what I call violators to draw the attention of the user to the primary plan that you want them on, that you want them to consider the most. Always have annual to monthly comparisons where the annual percentage discount is clearly displayed. Always have your CTA very clear and what you want them to do, whether that is start a free trial, book a demo, and again, test those. That's really the core things of any pricing page. Keep it simple. Keep it to the point where it's hard to say it without the context of the platform, but those components of if you can't fit your pricing columns at a healthy font above the first fold, that's too much, right? It should be like a poster. Yeah. That's where you
font.
want to be. Yeah. Hey? Healthy size font, right? Like where you're not squinting to it, you don't have to zoom in, because that's the alternative. People just like cram in these individual lines of the product benefit statements right into the columns just to make it fit above the fold. But that one there was a really good example of, they had the core value propositions of what you get. And then, okay, if you want more detail on this, here's the breakdown. That's a better way to do it for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.